Welcome to this week's episode of Are You Brave Enough? Today we have a very special guest, Lyndsay Dowd, and she is going to be talking about are you brave enough to modernize your leadership techniques? Stay tuned. Today, I would like to welcome Lyndsay Dowd to Are You Brave Enough? Lyndsay is an amazing, amazing woman. I've had the honor of being on her podcast previously, and I follow her work on LinkedIn. And I just love her work because she is such a heart-centered leader. But let me just give you a little bit of her bio. Lyndsay Dowd is an accomplished and recognized business coach renowned for her impressive background in sales and leadership. With over 23 years of experience managing large organizations for IBM, she has honed skills in leading diverse, high-performing sales teams. Lyndsay's passion lies in transforming leadership and fostering positive culture, earning her accolades such as the top 10 coach from Apple News and the prestigious 2023 Award for Innovation and Excellence. She was also named the Business Coach of the Year. So her risk, we go back to being, are you brave enough? Her risk taking was a little bit forced on her. But I'm going to not, instead of reading the next story, part of her bio, I am going to let her tell the story in her own words. So please welcome Lyndsay to Are You Brave Enough?
Thanks for having me, Karen Ann. So good to be here.
I am so excited to have you here because, like I said, I really do love your work. But
Thank you.
you had an interesting kind of risk-taking
Yeah.
moment in your life, right? So you worked for IBM for a long time. You
Long time.
decided to leave IBM
Yep.
and branch off. So you took the risk to leave IBM, but you didn't think it was that much of a risk.
Well,
And then
wait.
what happened?
So let me first say, my decision to leave IBM was major. Mostly, 23 years in any place is a very long time, but my family put in over 105 years. So I was like the last one of the family that was still there. And most people that knew me, and this is over, a lot of years, so thousands of people thought I was going to die there. So they really did not expect me to leave. And I was ready for this new chapter. So I had moved to a new company. I was asked to come over. I took a step down from where I was. I'm like, that's okay. I've got to learn the products. I've got to learn the processes. I've got to learn your systems. I'm a maverick. I'm a hustler. I got this. But in 6 months, they fired me. And I didn't expect it. I was gutted. I was so embarrassed. I was so full of shame. And it was nothing I ever anticipated would happen for me in my career. So after a month of just licking my wounds and getting up the courage to talk about it, I said to myself, what am I good at? What do I love to do? And how can I help people the most? And I wrote this job description, and the job description was this chief heartbeat officer, and it was advising sales leaders and leaders on how to build irresistible culture that drives results. I knew how to do it. I had done it many times, and I knew how to get the best out of people. And so I was interviewing up a storm, and all these people were like, you could do so many things. What do you want to do? And I'd say, I want to be your chief heartbeat officer. And they're like, oh my God, we need that so badly. We don't have it, but we need it. And I kept hearing it over and over again. I'm like, okay, I'm going to build it. So I built my company, Heartbeat for Hire, and I'm a speaker and a coach and a soon to be author and a podcast host. And yeah, so that's what I'm up to.
I am so excited. I mean, that is such a devastating story, right? To take that big risk to leave a company not only had you worked for a long time, but was, long associated with your family,
Right.
and to go someplace new, to try something new, only to have it, completely backfire on you, basically.
Yeah.
And yet instead of letting that defeat you, you could have, I guess, probably could have gone back to IBM at that point. I'm
Oh, they
sure they
asked me
would.
to come back.
I'm
No, they
sure they would have.
totally wanted me to come back.
I'm sure they would have loved for you to come back, but instead you followed your heart and said,
Yeah.
"No, I really want to be doing something different."
Well, and
I
the
and I
time,
love that.
thanks. The time that this happened was during the pandemic. So there was this great resignation was going on. Everyone was remote and people were making really big moves. There was a lot of intentional living going on. And I recognized that I had an opportunity to be really intentional about my next chapter. And so that word is really prevalent through all the choices that I make, from the time that I got fired until now. And, you know, I'm I feel good living in the space that I'm in because I'm doing what I think I was meant to do. And that's really hard, I gotta say. Like, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, never thought I'd be an author, never thought I'd host a podcast. So all these things have been slightly unexpected. But every time I get scared and every time I feel like, oh, I might be out over my skis on this, every single person I know that knows me, knows my story, they're like, don't you stop. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. And so I hold to that and I'm like, okay, I was used to making tons of money. And now I'm like, we're clipping coupons. We're this is just a different way of building your next chapter. And it's not easy, but it's worth it.
No, I hear you. I mean, I'm in the same boat. Had a 30-year corporate career before I
Yeah.
left to go on my own, although mine was a deliberate choice to do it.
Yeah.
I always did think I was going to be an author because I was an English major in college. So that was the part that I always thought I was going to
Yeah.
be. But as far as always thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur, thinking I was going to have a podcast, thinking I was
Yeah.
going to do video all the time, it's kind of crazy. And now I'm doing a lot of public speaking too, which
Yeah.
again, something I didn't expect to be doing, but I agree with you. I'm loving it. It
Good.
feels like exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's very different than a corporate job where you get the salary every week
Oh my
and
God.
there's the ups and downs and all the other stuff about building a business, which is not easy in today's world. But there's something about finding meaning. And one of the reasons that I want people to take risk, I encourage women to take risks, I talk about it, is to find meaning in your life, to make an impact. And that's exactly what you have done and are doing. And I love that. So tell me a little bit more about Chief Heartbeat Officer. Where
Yeah.
did that come from? Because it is exactly what people need, what
I think
corporations need.
so. Well, and I really do believe leadership has to go through a massive transformation. The old school way of leading with intimidation and aggression and embarrassment and belittling, it's gone. Like nobody wants it anymore. So these leaders that are like, I've been doing it this way for 20 years, they probably had some success, but nobody wants it. So but the challenge for those leaders is they don't know how to start being heart-centered. And that's so much of what my book focuses on. It's, everyone wants you to be a vulnerable and authentic leader. But if you've never been that, where do you start? How do you do it without sounding really fake or not genuine? And it's there's some steps that you can take that involve being vulnerable to the people that you lead. But I come across so many leaders who have evolved, and I love when I get to hear their stories because everyone is capable of change. Everyone is capable of self-realization, self-actualization, and really understanding that there's a better way. And there is no shame in that game. I love when I have people that come on my show or that I talk to or that I'm working with who say, I was a total jerk of a leader and I deserved all the bad things that came my way. And once I figured out how to do it right, the success follows. And it's true. It happens every time. And I think teaching people how to do that is really important. It's one thing to just say it. It's another thing to say, let me help you connect those dots. Because I know you want to build trust with your people, but if you've been yelling at them for the last however many years, there's not much trust there. So you've got to fall on your sword. You've got to figure out a way to appeal to them and say, hey guys, I think I've got it wrong. And I'm working on this. And I hired a coach, and I'm going to be making some changes. You're going to hear some different things coming from me. And it's going to be probably disarming, but I really want you to hang in there with me as I try and get better. What person is going to be like, screw you, I'm not listening? Nobody.
Yeah, no one, exactly. But you know what? One of the things that I was told early on, and even in the process, and I never felt like I was a terrible corporate leader, but I was a corporate leader in an environment where some of those behaviors were,
The norm.
accepted in the norm and
Yeah.
prevalent. And in hindsight, I realized that I probably employed more of them than I would have liked to in even in my growth
Yeah.
journey, right? And it's a growth journey.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's really interesting, and I love that you're addressing this, is that people that have been successful, sometimes they have harder time changing than
Yeah.
anybody else.
Yeah.
Because if you've done it one way and it's worked,
Well,
even though it may not be working in exactly the way you want it to, or maybe it's not working as well, but it's still working, it's really hard to let go of those behaviors. And
got
so I
it.
love that you're coming up with simple ways to do that.
Business is hard. I mean, your everyday existence, trying to get your bottom line, trying to hit your goals, trying to manage people, that's hard. And being in a leadership role, it's a lot of responsibility, but that's a really big piece that people don't take seriously. The responsibility is such a big deal. And when I say to leaders, you need to be having regular one-on-ones. Oh, I do. We do forecast calls. No, it's not what I'm talking about. You need to ask them, how can I be the best leader for you? That's a humbling question. It's a disarming question, and you're going to get different answers from every single person you ask. Some people are going to say, I need a coach. Some people are going to say, I need more training. Some people are going to just say, get the hell out of my way. I just need an escalation point. But you need to know how to support your people in order to be a good leader for them. And that's such a question that very few leaders know how to ask. But once you understand who you're working with and who you're working for, not them working for you, who you're working for, you can advocate for them, you can build them up, you can recognize them, you can, create new best practices, build trust. All the good things come when you understand who's on your team and who you are responsible to. So it's just so important that leaders understand that. And I think if you've been doing it one way for so long, connecting those dots, you're right, is so hard. And so giving them the tools to say, oh, I can do that. That's going to feel yucky, but I can do it. And when I've asked that question, oh my gosh, what a humbling question, but what a wonderful thing to ask.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always looked at my role as a leader as I was a facilitator. It was my job to make sure that they could get their jobs done. Right? That was my primary job, was
Move
to help
obstacles. Yeah.
help them remove obstacles, give them the support, give them the training, answer the questions,
Yeah.
whatever it needed to do so they could do their jobs. And that's always how I looked at my job as a leader. But one of the things, and I think you and I both take this approach when we're working with leaders, because we both coach leaders, when we're
Mhm.
working with them, is getting that self-awareness, getting to even understand what they're doing and not doing, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's blind, right? This is the
You're
way we
so
do it.
right.
It's
You're so right.
blind. And
I have a great story. I was working with a CRO, and he was, I told him to ask that question that we just talked about. And he goes, oh, I do that. I go, oh, tell me, what do you say? And he said, oh, I tell everybody, tell me why I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And I go, that's not the same. So let me tell you why no one's ever going to tell you an answer to that question. And let's maybe reframe it and let's try it a different way. And he was like, oh, I see why it's different now. But
Yeah.
the awareness is definitely not there, especially from the folks who've been real successful. And let's be honest, in most cases, certainly in tech, and certainly in the financial world, it's a man's world. So
Yeah.
men gravitate towards other men. And there's still so many ridiculous things that are said to women that they would never say to another man. So there's still so much bias. There's still so many things that exist that need to be stopped, but it's getting better. I don't want to paint
Oh,
a
a
picture
hundred,
of
a
all
hundred
that.
percent,
It's
100% it's getting
definitely
better.
improving. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% is getting better. But even I listen to stories, and I work mostly with women leaders, and I one of the things I work with women leaders on is helping them speak up and helping them
Mm,
uh, take a stand, stand up for their values. Because sometimes for women, speaking up is actually the biggest risk we can take.
sure.
Because it's scary.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when women speak up, we don't get respected. We don't get listened to. People don't pay attention until we learn how to do it in the right way. And you're absolutely right that men are getting better at paying attention, but it's still a learning process for everybody
Well,
involved.
and teaching men how to be an advocate for women is also a really important thing because once they understand why they shouldn't say something, they'll never make that mistake again. And they'll tell other people why that's a bad thing. So,
True.
I have so many horror stories of things that men have said to me over the years that, I mean, appalling. And my father was an IBMer. He's like, someone said that to you? I'm like, many times. And he's like, oh, like this is horrible. And I don't think a lot of men are aware of that. I mean, they're starting to hear more of it now and recognizing it was bad. I did have an old client of mine who called me and apologized 6 years after we had been working together. He's like, I was pretty terrible to you. Not terrible mean, but terrible inappropriate. And he was like, I could have done a lot better. And I know I really screwed that up. So I'm amazed you took my call. So, I mean, it's nice. It's some self-awareness. It's great. I was like, I was
I
so happy to hear that.
I love that. I can't tell you how many times in my career I was called a little girl.
Mhm.
And it sounds something, yeah, people that were doing it were a lot older than me, and I get it, but at the same time, I was a perfectly grown woman. It was completely not appropriate, but it's just amazing how those things occur. But let's get back to
Sure.
you just wrote you're well, by the time this podcast becomes public, your book will be public.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
written this book, which is a big risk in itself.
Yes.
Realize what a big risk it is to write a book because it's
Hard.
scary to write a book and put it out there because then it's out there for everybody to criticize.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your book. It
Sure.
just came out last
Yes.
week.
It's called Top Down Culture, and it's really a guide for any leader that they understand they need to make some changes and they're not really sure how to start. It's chock full of stories, good lessons, horror stories, things to do, things not to do, and really it's my methodology spelled out in the book chapter by chapter, and gives you so many hands-on things that you can do to modernize your approach. And the cool thing is the whole book is a mindset. So it's one of these things that you can take with you for your career and your life. It is not follow these steps and it's all going to be done. No, I mean, this is a process. This is we're all a work in process. We're all capable of making change. I catch myself sometimes like, this is what I teach, this is what I coach. And then sometimes I'm like yelling at my kids. I'm like, I would never allow a leader to do this. I cannot do this to my children. And so you even like you have to catch yourself all the time. And we're all imperfect beings. So it's just
Absolutely.
lots of hands-on ways to get to where you need to get to really be a modern leader.
Absolutely. And it's to your point. I mean, one of my big values is walking my talk, right?
Yeah,
If I'm teaching it, if I'm talking about it, I have to be willing to do it and I have to do it. And that's not always easy because to your point, we're all imperfect, we're all evolving, and I'm, learning as well as everybody else. But to your point, it all comes down to mindset. You know,
it does.
everything comes down to mindset, which is so important. And I would love to put our two books together. So we've got, your book about how to with your methodology, and then my book, which is a novel about it, which gives an example of a
Mhm.
modern leader in an organization. So you take the two together. Here's the theory, the things you can work on, and here's an example of someone who lives it in a
There are
corporate
never
setting.
enough examples. I mean, in my
Absolutely.
mind, I could tell stories 20 times a day, every day for the rest of my life, and there still wouldn't be enough examples because not everybody hears it. Not everybody hears it the way they need to hear it.
Yep.
And so hopefully through the book, you can kind of sit with the words, sit with the experiences, enjoy the stories, have a front seat to some really awful ones, and say, wow, I understand why that doesn't work. And I think I might have done that before, but I think I have a better way to do it now.
Good. Awesome. I love that you are being brave enough to modernize leadership techniques because they so need it. And I know a lot of people are doing this work in the world, but it just is so needed so badly because even now I see examples in talking to women and talking to other leaders that we still have a long way to go in corporate America.
We
We still
really
have a
we
long way
do.
to go.
There's enough companies and enough landscape out there that we could be doing this for 3 lifetimes and never hit it all. So yeah.
But we're gaining momentum, and that's what I
Yes.
love. It's about gaining momentum, and it's about doing things
Well, and
a little bit at a time.
we're in a shift right now, right? It started with the great resignation, and then we're kind of in this great reset. We had just had the great layoff of 2023, and there's all of these things that are happening that are changing the dialogue. You now have financial funds that are focused on environmental and social governance. Like, when has that ever happened? This is so great. That's the financial world that is making change. There's change happening everywhere. Our conversations around DE&I, that has improved, although with the great layoff, I watched so many teams get decimated, and that's just the wrong direction. But I do really feel like there is much more an appetite to have this conversation. And one of the things that I've rebranded the term soft skills to power skills, because these are leadership tenets. They are the markers of a leader who understands they need to be heart-centered. They understand that I need to meet people where they are, and by lifting them up and giving them the space to do the jobs they were hired for, I'm always going to see better results than micromanaging or doing any of the negative behaviors that we talked about.
Yay, 100%, 100%. I just
Power
I just
skills.
love that power skills. I heard somebody else the other day call them human skills.
Mm.
So there's a lot of people that are talking about this space and how to make it not soft skills, not they're essential skills.
They
they
are.
they absolutely are essential skills that we all need to have, to your point, whether it's in our jobs or with our families, our friends, our relationships, our charity organizations, whatever place we are, those are such critical skills. So I just wrap things up today, Lyndsay. I love talking to you. You and I are so in sync that we could talk. I know we could sit here and talk for
For
hours, but
sure.
we won't bore everybody with doing that. But I know you have one final little tidbit that you wanted to offer before we close things up today, or mention before we close things up today. And I'll let you do that before we wrap up.
Sure. I mean, obviously, the first thing I'd love people to check out is the book, Top Down Culture. You can find it on Amazon and Kindle, softcover, hardcover. That is probably the most meaningful thing you could do to ever support my work, but ideally, it's going to support you and what you need as a leader. That's the first thing. I also offer a couple of workshops. One is called Sell Me Your Story. So it's sellmeyourstoryworkshop.com. And that is a workshop that my partner Ashley and I have created about how you talk about yourself and how you do it in a succinct, articulate way that makes you go from interesting to irresistible. And we have a whole methodology. It's an easy, it's digital download. You can do it anytime. So that is out and available now. And then I offer a workshop usually once a month. It's a LinkedIn workshop, how to optimize your profile, how to hone your voice on LinkedIn. And all of these can be found at my website, heartbeatforhire.com.
Absolutely. I love that. So thank you, Lyndsay, for joining me today on Are You Brave Enough to Modernize Your Leadership Techniques? And I hope that for all the leaders out there, you are. Please check out Lyndsay's book. And don't forget, my new book, the sequel to Discovering Power, is going to be out at the end of September. It's called Pursuing Truth. So mark your calendars for September 28th and don't miss your opportunity to grab book 2 in that series. Join us next week for another episode of Are You Brave Enough? Loving this content? Are you brave enough to hit subscribe? I dare you to hit subscribe. Don't miss a single episode of Are You Brave Enough?